So what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the podcast. Today we have another great guest on. He is a coach to entrepreneurs, Mr. Dan Go. How's it going, man?
Uh, it's finally meet you.
Yeah, you too,
It's
man.
weird about Twitter.
It is, isn't it? I came
It's
across your stuff online, and I just thought you've got quite a lot in common with I think our general mindset to fitness, nutrition, and that kind of stuff. And it's just great to actually connect on our podcast.
Yeah, for sure. Tweeting and getting to the Twitterverse and doing all this kind of stuff and meeting guys like you has been eye-opening. And it's good to see that there's other people like yourself, putting out good work out there into the world.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you. And you've grown quite a following already, haven't you? You're at
Yeah.
2,500 followers already. That's
It's,
pretty quick.
yeah, 2,500 in less than a month, and I still don't know what I'm doing. Am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
You can do whatever you
Is
want on
that
this podcast,
okay?
yeah.
Okay, good.
So,
Yeah.
you also have a pretty good story, man. When I actually landed on your Twitter page, you have an inspirational story of kind of what you've done throughout your life. You've been through some low points, gone through some high points, and I think that that's really interesting. People that I've connected with that have kind of lived those ups and downs have very great insight into things and have the broadest experience. So, just as a bit of an overview, what is Dango all about, and where did you start out?
That's like the deepest question you can ask, man.
Oh shit!
Yeah, but let's start from the beginning, as they would say. I started out as a guy who was pretty unmotivated. I started out as a guy who was broke. He was a high school dropout. He really had no direction in life, and he thought that he was up for some great things, but nothing was happening in his life to make him actually feel that way. So one of the precursors to me completely changing my life was actually finding the gym. The gym is something that is a church to me. It is a place of just recovery sometimes. It's a place to work out my problems. And for me, during that time, it was actually a place to get away from all the laziness that I was actually exhibiting in my own life. So it started with my dad. He started going to the gym. So if you're a dad out there and you don't think that you're making an example for the people that for your kids at least, just know that you are. So my dad started going to the gym regularly. After I saw that, I went to the gym. I got like a month pass, and then after that, I was hooked. And from there, you could say, long story short, I started to change my life as a result of changing my body. So as I started to see the changes and as I started to see the mental changes that came along with body transformation, my world started to open up. So things that have happened since then, I was working for a kind of like a dead end corporation. Well, you can say dead end, but I was working a 9 to 5. I ended up just quitting that altogether. I became a trainer at a time. This was like 15 years ago, where training was not necessarily as popular. I became a trainer, became one of the top trainers there, ended up going on my own. And then from there, I owned a gym for the past, for actually, I think it was 2008 to 2018 when I sold it. And I had that gym for about 10 years. It was like one of the first transformation centers out there in North America. And then now I am fitness coaching high-level entrepreneurs, helping them get into their bodies with ease and minimal stress. And it's been a ride, man. It's been a journey.
That's amazing, man. And there's lots of points to dissect there. I think the first one is the idea that going into the gym when you're young, it's kind of like that rite of passage to make sure that you can be ready for the challenges that life are going to throw at you. And, I always say it's kind of the gateway drug to self-improvement, right? You don't really have to be rich. You don't have to be, of any kind of race or colour. You just need to apply yourself, right? And that builds this positive momentum going forward that can actually spill over into other parts of your life. And I think as a young guy, you really need that, because I always say, as well, as a young guy, you're kind of bottom of the barrel, right? Especially if you're not in shape, you don't have much money, you're kind of at like the bottom of the pecking order. And I feel that by going to the gym, it allows you to get yourself into life and into the other parts that you need to develop that are a lot more complicated than just building muscle.
Yeah, it's a microcosm of life, right? Essentially, when you do the reps at the gym, there's so many little life lessons that come along with it. It's like, let's just say you're trying to finish off a set. Do you let yourself stop 1 to 2 reps before you actually hit the target number of reps, right? And then just seeing things like this is seeing exactly how you show up in life. So what the gym does is it builds that discipline. And it also builds discipline and gives you results as a result of that discipline. So if you've been working out for like 1 to 2 years and you haven't necessarily been seeing anything in the first 12 weeks, once you hit that 1 to 2 year mark, you see the results of what discipline can give you. But yeah, man, it's like if you can be a discipline or you can have a discipline inside the gym, then you can take it to pretty much every single area of your entire life.
Definitely, and I have a really good quote that says no growth is isolated, and I really definitely agree with that. I think one area can improve multiple areas. One question that I did have for you was, when you grew up, you said you kind of grew up a bit overweight and you wanted to change. When did that shift actually happen? Like, when did you get to the point where you said, fuck this, man, I'm just going to go to the gym and change my body now, I've had enough?
Well, I've been dealing with body issues since I was maybe in grade 6, grade 7. It started off when I had like family members point out my bitch tits in front of me, in front of family members
shit.
and friends, and just it was horrible. It was
Horrible.
horrific. And I carried that with me until I actually started hitting the gym, which was actually in my early 20s, around 24, actually mid 20s. So, and I'm 40 years old for all the youngins out there. So in regards to that, I've always dealt with these body issues. And the point came when I was actually at a pool hall. So have you ever heard of like jits or jitoni?
No, I'm from the UK,
foosball.
so I've heard of
Foosball.
it. Oh, I've heard of foosball. Yeah.
Yes. So we were huge into foosball back then. And we used to play it at this pool table or at this pool hall. And then I remember I was playing a game of foosball against one of my friends. And then my ex-girlfriend actually came in through the door. And then she made this like halfway comment. She actually said, "Hey, Dan, your chest it looks like it's getting bigger right now. You working out?" And then I was obviously not working out at that time. And then one of my asshole friends, who's not a friend anymore, he just blurts out in front of everybody, like all your friends are at this pool hall, just to set context. So he blurted out in front of everybody. He's just like, "Nah, he didn't work out. He just has bitch tits." And then the whole place
Shit.
erupted in laughter. And then I was fucking mortified. So I went back home. I remember just fucking tearing off my shirt and staring in the mirror and I actually remember saying this to myself. I was like, never fucking again. Never fucking again. So after that, I didn't start with the weight room actually right off the bat. I started with sports. Started with getting back into volleyball, getting back into basketball. And then afterwards, when I found the weight room, I got hooked.
That's amazing, man. And I typically find that with people with motivation, it typically starts out trying to prove people wrong. So a lot of clients that I get that are younger, they kind of break up with their girlfriend, or they have an experience like yours, and they're like, fuck these guys, man, I want to prove these people wrong because they make me really upset. And I find that then transitions as you get more experience to having that internal and more intrinsic motivation, right? And I kind of went through that stage. I'm fortunate enough, I was never fat, I was never bullied, I was never kind of deprived, but I always had like a low sense of value for myself. So even when I was in really good shape, I had like body dysmorphia. I never thought it was enough. So I kept getting shredded and shredded and shredded, and I wouldn't eat when I went out. I was totally obsessive, and I was like, more will be better. If I can get that extra percent of body fat, I'll be all right, man. And it's weird what training and stuff can do to you in the bad sense, but after that, you kind of realize you don't need the validation of others, and you do this for, you kind of pay your rent every day for your own motivation and for your own dues.
Yeah, spite is a really good energy, though. I'm not going to discount
Agreed.
that. I love spite. So when I first became a trainer, everyone told me not to do it. It was like 15 years ago. The internet was like barely alive. And then everyone's like, don't do that. That's like a side job. So everyone told me not to do it, even from like my best friend all the way down to my family. And then afterwards, I used that. I was just like, well, fuck you guys. I'm going to make this a success. And then you guys I'm not going to say anything about it, but you guys will just see my results. So that took me a long time. But that energy only takes you so far, right?
Yeah.
There has to be at some point where it turns from wanting to spite others to enthusiasm for yourself. enthusiasm for your own progress and enthusiasm for your growth. So yeah, I totally get what you're saying there.
Yeah, awesome, man. And obviously there you talked about your gym business. So you kind of became a very good personal trainer, set up a gym business, which was obviously very successful. What was that gym business, and kind of what was the reason for you to kind of move out of it and sell it?
So the gym business was basically a conditioning center. So we started one of the first body transformation centers in North America. And then we essentially were, you know how like the challenges, 6-week challenges and
Yeah,
all
yeah.
this stuff, like we did that before they were even cool. We actually started that because that was like one of the biggest opportunities back then in fitness. And we made a lot of money off of that. We got a lot of clients. We changed a lot of lives. But then at some point in time, the reach was not enough for me, right? Because you can really change, like for our business or our gym business, we can change maybe like 1,000 people per year, right? As opposed to say, going online where the choices are limitless. And then with the actual gym business itself, we had the choice: should we franchise or should we license or do all this stuff for growth? I didn't want to do any of that stuff. So sometimes, like when you think of these decisions in your life, you can't just like really be looking at it from a money perspective. You have to actually take it through multiple lenses and see exactly what life would look like after doing this. So I saw like the end game of like all that stuff. I was like, fuck that. I'm not doing that. And what I decided to do at that time was, we're going to make this one gym as awesome as fucking possible. And that's all we're going to do. And we're going to make our results speak for ourselves, which is maybe like another spiteful energy or whatever it is. But that's what we did. And then that actually leads me to like one of my core tenets in life is just like, you don't need to actually have more, just like be more excellent, right?
Yeah, it's not always the quantity, right? It's more the quality of the one thing that you're doing or trying to master, in a sense.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Awesome. And obviously with moving from the gym business, you now coach entrepreneurs, which are a very unique type of people. Now, I have a few entrepreneurial clients. I'm kind of moving into that space, and they have unique challenges, and they see the world a lot differently, man. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I'm an entrepreneur, you are, and we'll kind of understand that. But I think for the general person, they don't see the kind of the stress, the horrible long days people go through, the sacrifice to build something great. So for yourself, working with lots of these types of clients, what are the kind of the biggest challenges that you find when they come to you that they kind of want to overcome?
A couple of big challenges would be, one of them is just taking away everything that they have actually learned about fitness and actually trying to piece together a plan for them that actually works for their lifestyles. Because with entrepreneurs, they're dealing with stress on multiple fronts. Okay, so they're dealing with stress with their jobs. I mean, that's pressure because they have to provide for their family, they have to grow. They're dealing with the pressure from their family. They're dealing with the pressure from their spouse, from their kids, and also the amount of pressure that they put on themselves, right? We're not just talking about the internal dialogue, but also the ways in which they treat themselves. So a lot of like entrepreneurs that I've worked with, they've used things like substances like alcohol, and actually usually alcohol to really manage the stress in their lives. And I would say, the challenges with entrepreneurs are kind of like the challenges that you see with other people, except for me, they're a lot easier to deal with because they have that all or nothing mentality, which is actually not so good either. But they will actually take what you say. If they will take your challenges as well, they will take feedback really well. And to me, they're one of the most enjoyable people to work with. Because again, I'm an entrepreneur, so I know what they're going through, and yeah, they actually take to instruction very well if they're given the right strategy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And I think you're right. With entrepreneurs, they kind of have this obsessive drive, and it can actually be a double-edged sword, unfortunately, because the obsessions that cause them to grow their business actually cause them to, when they want to let loose, go crazy on food, crazy on alcohol, and sometimes crazy on neglect of their body, because that's usually the first thing entrepreneurs sacrifice is their health, right? And, when you look at that, they're not just sacrificing their health, they're actually sacrificing the quality of their relationships, the potential money they can earn for their business, and overall happiness as well,
Hmm.
in certain areas. And I think the biggest one is energy levels, right? Like when you know, an entrepreneur, you want to make sure they're at the highest level possible. So from your experience, what do you think is good things that entrepreneurs can be doing to increase those energy levels under high states of stress?
Well, I'll talk about maybe a couple of the clients that I'm even working with right
Sure.
now, right? So I'm helping this guy. He's a New York Times bestseller. Not gonna name drop. I'm trying not to do that anymore. But yeah, so he has a pretty crazy productivity flow, when it comes to his work life. So one of the things that we actually found with him was he's an all or nothing guy. He's not a moderation guy. So with moderation guys, they can maybe do like 3 workouts a week, and they could say like, they could say, hey, okay, I'm good with that. He's all or nothing. So he actually needed to have physical activity in his life on an everyday basis as something he does every single day. So I think one of the things with entrepreneurs is understanding which mentality that they're coming from, what psychology they're actually coming from as well. And I'm sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, sure. So what can these guys do to, improve energy levels when it comes
Okay.
to
Okay.
their daily?
Sorry about that. Totally
That's all
went off
right.
a tangent.
That's cool.
Yeah. So what they can do to increase their energy levels is to really honestly like get down to the basis of like what your lifestyle looks like, and to actually devise a plan in which physical activity, drinking water, and eating healthily are parts of that rhythm that you have with your own life. And if you don't find what that rhythm is, then you're always going to be what I call like swimming upstream. So I'll give you an example. A lot of trainers would actually try to put their clients on things like 5 meals a day, right? And they think that because it's optimal, that's why this person should do it. That's why this entrepreneur should do it. But if I were to try to put an entrepreneur on 5 meals a day, that would create so much friction in their life with the amount of time it takes to actually make the meals, to eat the meals, and then to have the aftermath of whatever happens after those meals. So with entrepreneurs, like especially with energy, I think we have to like stick with the first principles, which we just talked about, but also do things in a way that actually fits the lifestyle and the natural rhythm to the way that you like to do things already. So I always say that every single person has like a natural rhythm based on their lifestyle, based on the times that they work out, based on the times that they feed each other. And as long as like, you can find what that rhythm is and do it consistently, then that makes things so much easier for you. And that actually gives you more energy and more choice to do with whatever you want with your time.
Definitely. I think that makes sense as well, because as an entrepreneur, you're making so many decisions during the course of the day. You suffer from decision fatigue, right? And it doesn't make
Yeah.
sense to make part of that decision food, right? Like, what am I cooking at 10 p.m. or what am I, having for lunch? You want to remove that so you can focus on the complex tasks and then kind of have the habits that give you that good body on autopilot.
Yeah. Well, like a lot of things with entrepreneurs is that the same, and you know this too, it's like the same principles you take to your business are the same principles you could take to your body. So, when we talk about, say, building a body, we want to make sure that everything just lines up with exactly how they like to live their lives in the first place. And literally every single client that comes in is like an n equals one to me, right? Every single person is an individual. So I do have like, people doing breakfast. I have people not doing breakfast. And I have people like working out 7 times a day, or, doing something physical 7 times a week. And I have some people just working out 3 times a week, and that's it. But we want to match it up with their psychology and their lifestyle.
Definitely. And I think a big thing is bio-individuality when it comes to nutrition and also training as well, because everybody's different. And what you see a lot in the industry, unfortunately, and what I try and move away from, is seeing this one size fits all approach, right? And kind of getting married to a concept, right? Like, I'm intermittent fasting or I'm keto, and making it part of your identity, and then getting offended if someone questions it. Actually, sometimes I fast. Some days I actually have a paleo diet. Some days I'm a flexible dieter, right? And I'm not tied to anything. I just do what works for me, because, like you said, n equals one.
I think diet agnosticism is going to be the next frontier, which is understanding that when people like make diets as an ideology, they're actually not doing the diet justice. The diet is like a tool, right? So some days I'll go low carb, some days I'll, go paleo, some days I'll go, some days I'll fast for longer, whatever it is. But these are tools in which I use depending on what the situation is. And then it's like, I say this to my clients all the time. It's like, if you want to go keto all the time, that's great, but why use a hammer for every single tool in the house
It's a good
or every
analogy.
single job in the house?
Yeah.
Yeah. These things are there be used for a reason, but not for every reason. So yeah, I'm full on about diet agnosticism, which is just basically saying that I think everything works, and I'm willing to make my own thing out of everything that is working.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
I also think as well, from a nutrition standpoint and a high performance standpoint, there are foods that, make you look good, and there are foods that make you feel good, right? And there's the difference between just achieving weight loss, which is most general population people, and then there's actually high performing executives and entrepreneurs that want a great brain, right? They want to not feel sluggish. They want to be able to do a 12-hour day and perform very well. So from your point of view, what do you think are the biggest differences between eating to look good versus eating to feel good?
Eating to look good is the first word that comes to mind is restrictive. All right, like when you eat to look good, you're trying to actually gain an outcome that is going to be ephemeral, that is actually not going to be something that's going to make you happy in the end. Everyone thinks that when I start looking good, whatever, there's a law of diminishing returns to how ripped you can get, right? But when it comes to eating to feel good, then that actually means that you're actually eating for performance. So a lot of like the entrepreneurs that I work with, I would say 100% of them, they eat for optimization, right? So it's optimization of both lifestyle and optimization of how they want to actually go throughout the entire day. And he said something like work 12-hour days and be able to do that and have the energy to go back to your kids and work and play with them when you get back home. So yeah, eating to feel good to me is basically just saying you want to eat for performance, not for aesthetics. And I would choose performance way over aesthetics, because when you do that, then you're going to get the aesthetics anyways.
Yeah, it's true. Definitely. Yeah. And I've moved from basically the aesthetics at the end of last year to a lot more of eating to feel good as well. And I actually still look good, man. Like, I still look okay, and I actually perform way better, man. And, that's because of food choice, right? It's trying to cut out things like the sugar and actually vegetable oil as well. Because I've heard vegetable oil can actually be very damaging for your health. So are there kind of any foods that you say, or things like sugar and vegetable oil you say are a no for your entrepreneurial clients? Are you quite flexible in that sense?
I'm very flexible. We deal with ratios. So it's like 80-20, right?
Yeah.
80% of your foods are going to come from here, 20% of your foods are going to come from here. But again, it really depends on the entrepreneur, right? Because some people will do better with moderation, and some people will do better with like going all or fucking nothing.
Abstinence. Yeah.
Yeah. So with some entrepreneurs, especially when we're like a fat loss phase, we just set like limits, right? At least give them an upper limit to like what they can do. So one of the upper limits we have, let's just say this New York Times bestseller guy I'm working with, we say 2 drinks a week. You can have them whenever you want. It could be whatever you want, but keep yourself to 2 drinks a week, right? And he deals well with rules like that,
Yeah.
And then while some other people may not.
Yeah.
But yeah, we set upper limits, but we try not to restrict things. What we try to do is actually teach them how to eat these things and then still get the results that they want.
Yeah.
I think that's much more powerful, in the end, because if we think about it, like, we're not going to be avoidant of these foods for the rest of our lives, right? We can say stay away from sugar, but like, what's going to happen when mama brings fucking cake to your house?
Banana bread, man.
Yeah. Banana bread, yeah.
Yeah.
This seems to be like the COVID thing, So
it's true.
So what are we going to do? Are we going to learn how to eat these things? Or are we going to just stay away from them altogether and be scared of them? Because that's one of the things that restriction does, is it creates fear around foods, making it seem like it's way more dangerous than it seems.
100%, yeah.
Yeah.
100%. And that's the same process that I take with my clients. So the 80-20 principle, the 70-30, or the 90-10. You know, you have to be a human at the end of the day. And whilst you want to prioritize your health, you want to be able to have that social time, right? And I know for a lot of my professional clients that work in the corporate world, they want to enjoy Friday night, man, and have a few drinks with their pals. And nothing wrong with that, man. You know, you can incorporate things like intermittent fasting, reducing the calories over the course of the week so they can have that wriggle room to do it, which is great. And as long as you're getting your vitamins and minerals in and those important macros that are going to help maintain your muscle mass and all that kind of lovely stuff, you're going to be good, man. I think that's great.
Yeah, I would also say, you know, you and I do damage control, right? So like we know that they're going to have whatever, they're going to this wedding, they're going to have like maybe 5 drinks there, you know, whatever, open bar, all this kind of stuff. So we'll, you know, as coaches, we'll give them the strategy. We'll be like, okay, well, maybe you're just drinking protein shakes all the way up to like this wedding.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, you can do, there's so many ways to go about it. You can do damage control. I think it's like teaching our clients how to have their cake and eat it too, but do so in a responsible way. Still learning still knowing what the principles are, right? So like first principles to me would be like understanding what your calories are.
Yeah.
The very basis. Then afterwards, your macros, maybe your timing after that. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely agree with that mindset. You also spoke about, I listened to one of your podcasts around the importance of strong glutes, right? And this made me smile because it's actually not something that I've come across before. But obviously, as an entrepreneur, you believe that having strong glutes says a lot about you as a leader. So do you want to dive into that a little bit?
Absolutely. I think the two most important muscles in anyone's body is their core and their glutes, right? I'm just thinking from a performance perspective. So if I see a guy with a big set of glutes, with a firm set of glutes, and I'm hetero, I'm straight, I have nothing against, all that, I have nothing against that, but yeah, nothing against that. But then if I see a guy with strong glutes, I'm like, that's one powerful ass motherfucker.
Yeah, man.
And he is probably as injury resistant as it gets. So when it comes to glutes, we have to understand that it should be the most powerful muscle in our body, but in most people, it is turned off due to the fact that they're sitting on it for long periods of time. So people have forgotten how to use their glutes in the first place. So I always do this test. It's either one of the two. So you could do like a body weight squat, do it for like 12 times, and then see whether or not your quads burn or your glutes burn first, right? Or you could do a glute bridge. And same thing, if your quads burn out before your glutes, then you know that you're quad dominant. Then you know that you're actually not even using your glutes whatsoever. And this is actually the case with like 90% of people that I work with. They don't understand that the glutes are actually supposed to be like one of the main movers in our body. And it is like is where we get the power from when we squat, when we deadlift, when we carry things. And if a person has a weak set of glutes, that to me is just a lack of attention and just the lack of understanding of how important this muscle is.
Yeah, that's so important. Actually, when I have clients and I train them face to face, one of the first things I do before doing legs is get them to do a glute bridge and actually say, can you actually feel your bum, and get them to put their hand under their bum to see if it's activated, because so many people, you'll see them do a squat for the first time and it's all kind of lower back, it's all kind of quad dominant, and their glutes and hamstrings are not firing, man. And a lot of that is weak posterior chain as well. So you find that guys especially, they train their front of their body a lot because they think that they're only one-dimensional. So they look at themselves in the mirror and they see that, right, this is what the Instagram selfie I'm sending to this chick, she's going to see this. And unfortunately, the glutes, the back, traps and hamstrings can be very weak. And I think that has a big effect on posture too. So you see like a lot of guys over like that, and that's from like being very chest dominant and not training back enough. And then you couple that with actually sitting at your desk for like 12 hours. Man, your posture is going to be fucked. Seriously.
Yeah. And they actually said that this was a precursor to attraction. So what you were saying about posture is like if a guy has like strong glutes, he's obviously going to have better posture. And then when women see guys with better posture, when they see a guy with a strong set of glutes, I don't know how old are you?
25.
Okay, so 25. So I'm thinking back to like 1985. So it's probably like before you were born. So before in 1985, people would look at a guy with firm glutes and they'd be like, "Oh shit, that guy's got it going on." They wouldn't
Right.
look at his chest, they wouldn't look at his arms, they'd be like, look at that booty." Or the girls would just be like looking at that derriere. So that to me, and just from an evolutionary sense, it's a precursor to attraction because when you're standing taller, when you're walking stronger, people will notice that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think as well for especially executives and entrepreneurs that are kind of trying to dominate that boardroom and really show that they're, mean business, man. Like that has such a big effect, man. That could be the 5% that gets you that deal.
Yeah, and not to mention the fact that you're going to be pretty much setting up your hip for long-term health. So I've noticed with a lot of guys like who I've been working with, when they start strengthening their glutes, their low back pains like just suddenly disappear because they're not putting so much pressure on their low back anymore. They're actually putting the most pressure on the muscle that should be the strongest.
Yeah,
Yeah, man.
for sure. Amazing. And in regards to overall training as well, we've spoken about obviously glute training there that's important. For your entrepreneurial clients that are quite busy, I've typically found myself that kind of a full body workout, maybe 3 days a week, where you hit all muscles really does work. From yourself, is there anything that you think has worked well for clients that are kind of busy, professionals and high level CEOs that is useful?
I call it the rule of three, which is you literally only have to focus on 3 workouts a week, 3 exercises per workout, and that's about it. Maybe 3 gallons of water, 3 liters of water a day, if not more than that. So if I want to make someone lose fat while still retaining their muscle, then I will just focus on the main lifts that we need to focus on, right? Especially if they're lacking time. So we would only focus on, say, doing like a squat, doing a bench, doing an overhead press, doing a chin up, doing a row, doing some sort of like thrust or hip hinge pattern. And then we would just focus on maybe 3 workouts, 3 exercises per workout, and just gain strength in each and every one of those while you're dieting. Now, if I want to train someone for physique, it's going to be a little bit different. You know this. Like, you got to spend a little bit more time. You got to, especially if they have those type of goals, those are like, okay, you have to understand what you may be giving up as a result of trying to get after these goals, which could be more time spent in the gym.
Sure.
But if it's just from like a lean down fat loss perspective, I try to actually just make the workouts as lazy as possible, give them like plenty of rest times, and just focus on doing the exercises that I just listed above with as perfect form as possible while progressively overloading the weight slowly but surely as we're going through these weeks.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. And I actually typically say to people, don't commit to training 6 days a week. Like, start with 3 days, man. 3 days is better than 6. And people go, well, how? It's like, well, most people can't keep up 6 days a week, especially if you've got a family, you've got kids. Like, it's a lot of sacrifice, man. Like, even as me, it's my job. I find 6 hard. And a big thing, I think, again, going back to that, building momentum. If you're just starting out or you've just, maybe got into bad shape, you don't want to hit the ground running with 6, man. You want to be 3 workouts a week, slowly build up, and that then actually builds your confidence in, achieving your goal.
Yeah, I think 6 times is overkill too. And then we have to think of like second order thinking as well. Like, what could be the consequences of that? So the consequences could be it's like lack of prioritization of recovery. Recovery is just as important as the workout itself. But also, I actually find that some people can get addicted to the gym.
Yeah.
Right? If they do it every single day, then they're going to be like, what is my life if I don't go to the gym? And then that creates sort of like a mental disconnect right there. So like sometimes I've had to pull clients back from doing work. They will work out like 7 days a week, but only because it was an addiction to them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man.
Yeah, and obviously that obsessive mindset with an entrepreneur, it's easy for them to want to do that, man.
Sure. For sure. They think more is better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think recovery is big. And obviously sleep is massive as well. So I think one of the biggest things that entrepreneurs suffer with is lack of sleep. And there's that, that phrase that, gets banded about, I'll sleep when I'm dead, which is the most counterproductive bit of advice you could give. And I understand, right? You need to sacrifice to win, but you're actually operating at such a lower level when you underslept, man. I think you can, your overall performance drops by like 30%. You can eat on average 200 calories extra per day. So over the course of the week, it's like year 73,000 or something. I read it. It's crazy, man. So I try and incorporate sleep routine with my clients and things like that. What is it that you typically find works well for your high stress clients when it comes to sleep?
Okay, so definitely agree with everything that you said. With sleep, it's actually a number of things. So sleep to me is multifactorial. So number one is how often are they looking at screens at night? That's like the first thing that I will look at. How long are they actually getting sleep for right now? Do they have kids? Because I have a baby daughter, just like she's like 4 months, 4 weeks old. And sleep is on short supply right now.
Challenging, yeah.
Yeah, right when he says like, oh yeah, you're eating like 200 calories more per day, I'm like, yeah, that's about it. Yep, that's
That's
about
me.
it. Yeah, that's me. So we have to understand like kids in the picture, especially with like one of my clients, he can get like 8 hours of sleep, no problem, but his kid goes into his room in the middle of the night. So what's he supposed to do when that happens? But let's just say if I were to set up the perfect sleep for any one of my clients or just perfect sleep routine, it would actually look like this. It would be blue light blockers on at least like 3 to 4 hours before you intend to go to bed. This, especially in living in where we're living right now, looking at screens every day, we don't understand that looking at a screen is akin to looking at the sun right before you go to sleep. What do you think that's going to have on, what do you think effect it's going to have on your system? So that's number one. Number two is stop eating around 3 hours before you go to bed, because if you eat like right before you go to bed, then guess what? Sleep is probably going to get disrupted. In only a small number of people I know, it doesn't. But yeah, we actually put Aura rings on our clients too, which is like really fun. So we can actually, they're like,
They're good, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah, and then we check the stats and we're like, nah, man. Okay, so we would stop eating. Obviously, no alcohol throughout the entire day if you really want to optimize your sleep, because alcohol just races your heartbeat. You're not necessarily going to get the best sleep. I would say maybe 1 hour before you go to bed, I would read a fiction book. Preferably one that's going to be like somewhat self-improving. For me, it's The Alchemist or Dune, or I love a bunch of like these fiction books. I want to make sure it actually feeds me as well.
Of course.
And then I would say things to add would be like blackout shades for their room, a sleep mask, obviously, and I love chili pads as well. Have you ever heard of it? Like,
No,
a chili pad.
what are chili pads?
Oh God. So a chili pad, for me, I'm a hot sleeper, right?
Okay.
So I can sweat when I go to sleep if it's too hot. So other than turning my temperature down, I want my mattress to be cool. So this chili pad, it's kind of expensive. It's like maybe $500 or something like that. But the chili pad cools your mattress. It's like having like this.
Okay.
It's like sleeping on a cool mattress the entire time.
I got you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
nice.
beautiful. I recommend to anyone that can afford it, please go get it. So yeah, I turn on my chili pad, and then I would just create some sort of routine out of the things that I've just said right there, and that's actually a routine in itself. That's basically a routine. If you can actually do a routine for your sleep as you do, say, for your morning, you're going to find that you're going to be able to go to sleep much faster, because it sends a signal down. When you do the routine, it's basically sending a signal down. It's time to churn down. It's time to turn off right now. So that's what I would do.
Yeah, amazing, man. I think that's absolutely perfect, all of those points. And just two more to add to those. I'd say going to bed early is an important one just for circadian rhythm. I think that's good. If you can get to bed, as it gets dark and wake up when it gets light, that's fantastic. I mean, that's not always possible, right? in real life. But if you can, you kind of, obviously get your 8 hours, but the earlier the better usually, because you're going to wake up with a better circadian rhythm. And I'd also say as well, potentially, like you said, being cool before you go to bed. So actually having a hot bath and a shower, heating your brain temperature up and then letting that cool back down. I found that that's a pretty good way for me to like chill out, get my brain temp down, do a bit of reading, and then get into my other sleep routine.
Do you shower in the morning as well?
Yeah, man, I've got OCD, so
God.
I do.
I'm like, because I shower in the morning, I'm like, is that overkill if I shower right before I go to sleep? But now you're giving me permission.
You can, man.
To go
yeah.
shower. Okay, fuck.
I try not to, because it's a waste on water, man. Like, there's no need to do it apart from my obsession.
Yes.
But unfortunately, it happens.
Okay, so how long before you go to sleep do you take a shower or bath?
How long? Probably like right before, man. Pretty
Okay.
close to before. Maybe like half an hour before I sleep. So I try to do half an hour reading before I
What
get to
about
bed.
your hair?
What about my hair? What do you mean?
Yeah. Like, does it still wet by the time you go to sleep?
I got a hairdryer, man. Come on.
Okay. I'm
Do you not
fucking
use a hairdryer, no?
I'm a fucking dunce. Yeah. Yeah. A hair dryer, of course. Of course.
Yeah. I'm one of those metrosexual guys, man. I've got one.
Dude, did you see the way I'm doing my hair right now?
Yeah, it looks slick,
I'm
man.
with you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're with me,
I'm
bro.
with you. Yeah, man.
I love it, man. I love it. Um, for as well for entrepreneurs, I think what's really important is like stress. So we talk a lot. I talk a lot with my clients about unwinding and the importance of kind of being out in nature, and like that sounds like your woo woo spiritual bullshit, but like, you know, it's actually proven to be very good for your health and very good for unwinding, man, and reflecting. I find that when I'm really stressed and I've got loads of problems, I can solve problems by not focusing on the problem. It's really weird. So like reverse psychology right there. Like going out and just unwinding and getting a different perspective actually allows me to tackle that problem or find a solution. That's what I find myself. For you, yourself, and for the clients you have, how do you kind of unwind, deal with stress, and kind of tackle that problem?
Hmm. That's it's a really good question, man, because there are different types of stress, right? It's like if you're productive and you're working towards like a goal and you have that kind of eustress, that's great. But then there's also the unnecessary stress that we create on ourselves. So through that, it's one of the ways we mitigate stress is actually through how we eat, right? If you're putting processed foods in your body, if you're like drinking alcohol on a regular basis, guess what? Your emotions are not going to be in check, or you're going to have a much harder time trying to keep your emotions in check if your body's not feeling the best. So that's one of the ways that we mitigate it. The other way is through what we call nature walks, or what the Japanese call forest bathing. So I think they did a study in Japan with overworked corporate guys, executives. They would just make them go walk in the forest for about, I think it was like 1 hour a day, and they found that the stress levels went down significantly. And I think just like one 30-minute to 1 hour walk in nature is enough, like you said, to actually not remove your problems, but at least give it a different perspective, right? I find that when you walk in nature, it takes away your default mode network, right? You're basically, you have this habitual way of thinking, and you're in the place in which you habitually think this. So you need to change your environment in which to actually see something different. So that, I think that's what nature walking is. It basically takes you away from default mode. It gives you all sorts of like just kind of like you're smelling the forest, the sun's on your face, and you're feeling really good. And that's why you can come up with the best solutions when you don't even focus on the problem itself. So that's one of the ways that we do it. Nature walks. The other ways is through regular physical activity, right? We have to create stress in order to manage stress. So the way in which I look at stress is it's just unmanaged energy. So if we think about anxiety, it's kind of like the same thing. It's just like we're mismanaging this energy that's inside of us, so it's stuck inside of us. And actually look at entrepreneurs and just everyone in general, we're all like big fucking children. Guess what happens if you don't take your child out to walk, to play, to exert their energy? What's going to happen at home? They're going to be just stressed out, annoying little fuckers, and they're going to make your
Yeah.
life miserable. That's the same thing with us. We have this energy inside of us. We need to expend it. So one of the ways that we do that, obviously walks in nature, but lifting some iron, taking care of your body, getting some reward for that. And the last part would be just general, actually it'd be two parts. It'd be mindfulness and also observation. So mindfulness is literally just sitting down and just like staring at your thoughts, or it could be box breathing, or it could be just any type of thing in which you're sitting down and doing absolutely nothing and being okay with that and doing that for a period of time. I do this actually when the water boils, when I'm making my coffee. So I have it as part of my routine. The other part is observation. So like if you don't have a regular journaling practice, then all these stresses are going to come back to haunt you if you're not learning from them, if you're not learning from the root. So one of the things that you have to do is you have to really get in, you have to dig deep, and you have to journal out these observations as to why you feel these stresses in the first place. And again, like, if I could say, wave a magic wand, do this one thing, and you'll get rid of stress, I wish I could do that, but it is multifactorial, and everyone needs to approach it from that angle.
100%. I completely agree with that. And I think you're right, with stress, it's broken down into so many different areas, right? You've got your environmental stress, relational stress, work stress, emotional stress. There's like all these areas, man. And one of the things that I think we always have control over is our environment. Mental stress, in the sense that, especially like your workspace, right? Like, and I say this to a lot of my clients that have now moved to working at home. They're kind of like a little bit off with their training some days, or especially when they started out. And I was like, why is this? And they're like, I find it so hard to get into this routine. And like they tell me, like, their whole workspace is cluttered. They're like sat up uncomfortably. They're watching the news all the time, which at the moment is not the best thing to do, especially for your headspace. The worst thing, that's it. The worst thing, right? Of course. And it's just very destructive, man. But you actually have control over that. And, even with your social media feed and the people you follow, just unfollow people that are not conducive to a good environment, man. And that will actually take a lot of the stresses away, because we find that, I find personally, I delve into bad habits when I'm in that environment. But when I'm in a better environment, I actually don't do that as much. And I think that can reduce so much of your stress, is the control of the things you have around you.
Yeah, they actually did this really cool study. Did you hear the study of the mice?
I think I've heard of it. Yeah, you'll have to explain it to me though.
Yeah, so they put mice in different environments. So they had one, and they put cocaine drips in there. So
I've heard this one. I've heard this one. Yeah.
Right? So they had one environment where the mice were in just like a shitty, cluttered existence, and they took cocaine every single day. The other environment was, they were out in nature, they had trees, park benches, and like all this kind of stuff. And then they touched the alcohol, they had touched the drip once, and then they never touched it ever again. So this leads me to thinking like, okay, so what do we have control over? We have control over us to a certain degree, but we definitely have control over our environment, at least. So things in which the environment kind of like clutters your space, or actually kind of takes away, is like clutter, is if you have like so much fucking clothing and you're not donating anything, you're not purging on a regular basis, if you follow really angry people on Twitter, if you're always watching the news, if you don't have inspirational things around you that you're looking at, if you have really shitty friends,
Yeah, it's true.
Like, yeah, sometimes if you can just change the environment, then you can change the person.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I remember, this was a quote I remember. It's, environment is the invisible hand that shapes your outcomes.
I love that. It's so true, right? Because you don't actually know that it's happening until you fucking have done 10 beers and, it's 5 a.m. in the morning, you're still up and you're like, shit, actually, it was the environment. This is not really me. When I'm in a different place, I don't do that.
One of the things I found with one of my clients who actually came up with this kind of like, he couldn't find himself the time or the motivation to work out. He had his gym equipment in his office. And I told him, I was like, get that shit out of there.
Yeah.
Right? Because you don't want to think about the work that you have to do while you're getting a workout in. So we actually took his like equipment out of his office, put it in his family room. And then from there, he started to work out regularly again. Right? So sometimes it's just like a minor change like that. But one of the biggest like problems I see with entrepreneurs is trying to like make an office and a gym space at the same time. When you really should separate these things. You should separate the environments.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And I think it's the same with just working and like bedrooms. So, working in your bedroom's not very optimal, because bedroom's a place for rest or whatever else goes on in there. And obviously your work is where you grind and you start hustling. So you kind of want to separate that out as two different headspaces as well.
For sure.
Awesome. And lastly, what I want to touch on is something slightly different. So I understand that you have had a great experience with psychedelics and you have experimented with it. And I've spoken to other people on the podcast about it, and it's something that I'm, looking to potentially look to do in the future. And there's been some great stories from it. What was kind of the reason you wanted to do it in the first place?
So at first, when I was a kid, I actually did it on a recreational basis. So back then, in my heyday in high school, that was a long time ago, that's when raves were just like crazy. Like raves are crazy now, but raves were not like how they are now as they were back then. We used to
No.
have them in these grungy garages and warehouses.
Oh,
It
cool.
was amazing. Yeah. So I used to take I just started out recreationally doing ecstasy, doing like mushrooms, really experimenting. And then when I look back at those times, and I look back at who I am right now, I I have to be remiss to think that it did not have an effect on who I am as a person. So like when I was doing psychedelics back then, like I actually turned out to be a completely different person than the rest of my family. Like they're all working 9 to 5 jobs and they're all, having a good life and really stable, but I am just the opposite. So I think what psychedelics had done for me, or I didn't even realize it back then, was again, we talked about the default mode network, which is like essentially everyone has these grooves in their brains, and they're kind of like ski hills. And the more that you go down the ski hill, the more the groove actually starts to set in pattern. So what psychedelics does is it actually helps you see things like a walk in nature does, maybe from a different perspective. So after using them recreationally, I started to see kind of like what the science was behind it, because in the past 5 years they've been using it for numerous things, like cancer patients for therapy, for PTSD, for a number of things. And I got pretty interested in that again because I was like, shit, I love these drugs anyway, so let's see exactly what happens. And then I did it under controlled settings. So one of the first things, actually one of the most like prolific, or one of the, I would say it's one of the most memorable times of my life, was doing an MDMA therapy session. So during the therapy session, it made me realize that we don't understand how much shit that we actually hold on to. And we think that we're walking around normal throughout this life, when we're really, everyone's like walking around with like this huge, like these multiple wounds that they have not even healed from a psychological level. So all MDMA therapy was just me talking to a microphone while the therapist administered the doses, and then it was just like literally me talking to myself the entire time. And they say that one therapy session with MDMA is worth 100 therapy sessions with a regular psychologist. I don't know if that's the case, but I'm going to say it was very helpful for me, for the intention in which I used it, which was just to let go of like these resentments I had since I was like a kid, since I was a child. And as I've gone kind of like deeper into like psychedelics, it's something that I would not necessarily recommend for everybody or anybody, until they have actually done research around it. And at least for me, it actually helps me just see things from a different perspective and not be caught in my own habitual way of thinking. And that's what psychedelics has done for me. So I've done psychedelics on both a macro and a micro level, and I still utilize both of those tools to this day.
Amazing. I spoke with a guy. That's unreal. He says something similar. So he basically said, like, when you walk around normally, there are like these walls that are there, right? And we don't know that they're there. And he says when you experiment with psychedelics, what happens is these walls come crashing down, right? And like all of these like fears or like worries, they kind of like evaporate, and you kind of see this different, you kind of see the 360 of what's around you. And like he said, for him, it was super amazing. He had such a great transformation through it. He looks at the world differently. But I think you're right. There's some guys, and there's a big YouTuber at the minute that took some ayahuasca or went on an ayahuasca trip, and he had a big negative breakdown on YouTube.
Yeah, I saw that.
Connor Murphy, right? So I guess you're right. I think it can be potentially dangerous, do you think, for certain people to take if they're not in the right space?
There's a number of dangers that I've actually seen firsthand. So one of them is just like an over-reliance on psychedelics. So like people say that you can't be physically addicted to these substances, but you can be psychologically addicted to these substances. You could be psychologically addicted to wanting to go trip and to leave your reality every single week.
Yeah.
Or for some people, every other day.
Yeah.
And that can lead to psychosis. I mean, that could lead to a number of problems. But there's also the fact that some people are dealing with mental issues already, that they may know of, they may not know of, if they have like, mental issues, say from a hereditary level, like these are things to consider before ingesting, before taking psychedelics. And the other one is like not having the proper professionals around you when you're taking psychedelics in the first place. Like if some people I know, they'll take it with their friends, but their friend is a total fucking like
Junkie.
sad,
Yeah.
junkie.
Yeah.
They're sad about life. They're not feeling it. They're not really a good sitter. And then that would have an effect on them when they're tripping. So I think like, especially in for anyone doing it their first time, definitely go through a qualified professional. They'll tell you like what the dangers are. They'll actually do the tests up front to see whether or not you should be taking psychedelics or whether or not you're actually safe. But there's so many dangers. And actually the first one that I mentioned is the one that I see a lot of entrepreneurs fall prey to, which is just like getting so addicted to taking trip after trip after trip, thinking that they're seeing things when they don't do enough time to actually integrate the things that they're observing.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And I think there is a big risk with that, isn't it? Because it is kind of glorified. And I know that like Joe Rogan speaks about it a lot, unfortunately. And I think I love Joe Rogan. I think he's great, man. And, I don't have a bad word to say about him. But unfortunately, some people take what he says on face value, right? And they see him talk about it and they're like, actually, I'm not going to question that. Psychedelics must be the way forward. Joe Rogan does it. That means it's fine for me. And I guess there is subjectivity with everything. And especially with a drug that has so many benefits, we also have to consider those other parts to it as well.
And it's still so early.
Exactly,
no one knows, like, well, we're just trying to figure out what these things do.
Yeah.
We're still trying to figure it out. And in regards, actually, I think you mentioned like there's this one guy who went through just like one crazy psychotic trip. This guy Connor Murphy or whatever it was. And I saw that video being kind of bandied about on the internet. And I don't necessarily think he should be the face of psychedelics either.
No.
Because there is a certain responsibility that comes with doing these drugs, and far be it from me to say like if that's kind of like one case out of like maybe however million cases have actually done it and come out the other side,
of course,
not bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't want to use that as like that. I think that's like kind of like using the n=1. It's like, hey, if this happened to this person, it could happen to everybody. I don't know if I want to like have everybody too scared like that.
For sure.
But yeah, man. But yeah, psychedelics for me have been a gateway. And actually one story that I have with psychedelics is I think it was 5 years ago. So 5 years ago, I ended up my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, she was coming to meet me in Gili, Bali, in Bali in Indonesia. She's going to meet me on the Gili Islands. But before that, I was there with my friend Chad. And he was like, dude, they had the most awesome mushrooms here. We got to try them out. So I'm like, okay, cool. I trust my friend Chad, although I shouldn't. I shouldn't trust him that much. But so I ended up trusting Chad, and then we ended up taking these mushrooms. And I went through this really cool trip, gone to ocean, came back out. And then when everything was starting to settle and I was starting to get kind of like a hold of reality again, a realization came to me during that time, which was you should sell your business and you need to go out and you need to create the pretty much like the dream that you always wanted to create. And then far be it from me to say, I think psychedelics brought that, I guess you could say, that inner communication out to me, right? And I don't want to make it woo woo and be like, oh my God, like, this guy was saying like, golden pigs or whatever it is. But what I think psychedelics does is it teaches you things that you already know, but maybe are pushing down because you're too scared to fucking see them.
Yeah.
At least that was actually the case for me. I don't know if it would be the case for anyone else.
For sure. Like it's unsurfaced kind of what you kind of already knew was there subconsciously, but it's kind of brought it into your conscious and given you confidence in the message kind of thing.
Absolutely. Like hey, it's okay. Like you can actually do this.
Yeah.
Right? This is a possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. And I guess that could be helpful for so many people as well, that I personally find that as well. Sometimes you're on the edge of making a decision, like, shall I do it? I actually have the fuck it mentality and I just go and do it. But I guess other people aren't that maybe brave or naive as me. And I think, psychedelics can change the world in that sense, potentially.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Or give them a different perspective on things that they're already thinking about, right?
Yeah,
Because when they think about it from their own mentality, they're only seeing it from one side of things. Maybe
yeah,
there's another side that's maybe a little bit kinder, maybe a little bit more growth oriented.
yeah,
So yeah, I think psychedelics just show me, at least it shows me what I probably already know, but haven't communicated to myself
yeah,
for some way, for some reason, shape, or form.
yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
man.
Amazing. And lastly, where can everybody connect with you and find you online? Yeah, please plug away, Dan.
That's a shit. Yeah. I'm working on this right now. So you can catch me on Twitter. That's the first thing. This is where I post and tweet probably like 100 times a day. So it's at Fit Founder. So twitter.com/fitfounder. That's where you can find me. And I don't know when this podcast is going to be launched, or when it's going to be put out, but I also am working on a website. It's called highperformancefounder.com, and I have a mission to help 100,000 entrepreneurs transform their bodies and lives with ease and minimal stress. And then that is going to be a place in which I'm going to be doing so. So yeah, hopefully by the time this comes out, that's going to be online.
Amazing, man. I'll make sure to plug both of those places. And a big thank you for coming on today. I've really enjoyed our conversation. We covered a lot of great
Same.
points. And man, if you're ever in London or the UK, let me know. We should have to go for some food, go for a drink, go for a
Yes.
lift, and
Yes.
catch up, man. After this virus stuff
Yeah.
is over, man.
Yeah, I hope the travel restrictions start to open up a little bit, but same to you. If you're in Toronto, we got like a huge, amazing crew down here, and we would love to have you. We'll set up a dinner and do all that kind of stuff and show you around.
That'll
Sound
be
good?
amazing, man, for sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, man.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much for listening, guys. And yeah, make sure you give the podcast a 5-star rating if you did enjoy it.